This is a 1997 Toyota Century V12, and got this unfortunate thing going on back here in the back of the trunk. So when we first got it, there was water in here and there was water in there. There tends to be more water on this side than on this side, but you can see some of the rust on that side, and then you can see a lot of rust on this side. But you can also see a hole right there, and then there's another hole right there, and that's actually a rust hole. So the idea is to try to figure out where the water is coming in. So what I've got is multiple cameras. Got this camera, that camera. I've got two flashlights, a camera light, and this LED searchlight. So I'm gonna get the camera set up, get the light set up, and then this is just figure it out as you go. So it may not be perfect, may have to make some adjustments on the cameras or the lights, but what I'll do is get everything set up, close the trunk, and then what I'm going to do is take garden hose and I'm going to spray it everywhere along here, around the tail lights. Also going to spray it up in here to see if the water is going down in there, because right now it is not known where that water is coming from, and that rust down there is going to become more and more of a problem, as indicated already by that one pinhole down there. That is a leak caused by rust, so it needs to be stopped. So get this set up and figure it out. All right, got everything set up. Got two cameras and 1, 2, 3, 4 lights in here. I'm going to close this trunk, and the lighting should be better once the trunk is closed. And then I'm going to start spraying water everywhere. Alright, so there is some water in there. I'm really curious where it came from. From what I can see, it doesn't look like it's running from the walls. It looks like it's running in here, and then there's a pool right there. So I don't know if I'm even gonna figure out where it's coming from. All right, here's test number 2, and what I think is happening right here in this triangle portion of the trunk is there's a whole bunch of water in there right now, and what I think is happening is water is running in underneath here and filling this up and then it runs down this way. So I've got lights set up again, one camera set up, and then I'm going to close the trunk and spray with water again to see if the flow or the water changes up in here. See right here, there's water flowing quite a bit from right here. Looks like this light housing is filling up with water pretty good. Definitely a lot of water flow in there. I know it's dripping all over the place in the trunk right now, but there's quite a bit of water flow going in there. Here's what's going on inside the trunk. So previously it pulled back that liner and did some tests to try to determine where water was coming into the trunk, and discovered that there's a bunch of water there. In fact, it just rained a couple times over the last couple days, and there's new water in there that's creating a rust issue down inside there. And discovered on the video that water's coming from somewhere over this way down, and then also there's some water coming over here on this side running down as well, but not as bad over here. Then I didn't realize it, but there is also water in under that side, except it seemed like it was delayed or something, because at the time it didn't look like it was there, and then it just magically appeared. So now I've removed the plastic piece that goes here, removed the liner over here, and by the way, didn't know this, but discovered that there is a gas pull to open tab that was hidden behind the liner. I don't know how that's going to help anybody if it's behind the liner, but that's where it was. And now that I know it's there, I'm going to make sure that it goes on the outside liner. There has been some interesting discoveries as far as how the water is getting into the trunk, and one of them is really concerning, especially on this side. So I discovered that there is a hose right here that goes down here, and it looks like at one point that hose used to go through this hole. And here's the messed up thing about this, is finding out that that hose actually goes to right here. So when you put gas in the car, any excess goes down here and goes through that hose. So what was happening is anytime there was ever any overfill, the fuel was going directly into the trunk of the car. And when I recall the last two times I put gas in the car, there was a fuel smell that smelled stronger than normal. And then this now explains it. And then, so not only was the fuel just dumping into the trunk if there was any overfill, the other issue is that this fuel door does not close all the way properly. So what was happening is whenever it rains, the water just runs down the car through here and goes right into that hose. So that now explains the water on this side, but now it doesn't explain the water on this side because obviously there's no fuel tank and no fuel hose on this side. But what was discovered on this side, and there is a similar issue on this side that also exists on this side. And what was discovered on this side is that there is a bolt that goes right there that's missing. There's a bolt right there that's missing, and there's a bolt right there that's missing. And especially that one right there is right there. So whenever rain or you wash the car, water is going directly inside the trunk of the car. And my understanding is that this car was in a rear end accident at some point. I don't know the extent. It might have just been the bumper, but it definitely explains why there's some nuts and bolts missing there, and then, like I said, there was some leaking over here, and there's a bolt missing there and there. So that explains why water's coming in this way as well. And then what's also not helping is there's this foam gasket that's pretty much rotted away, so it's not helping at all. So those need to be replaced. This is all the rusted metal that was sitting in the right hand side of the back of the car. Hopefully it didn't cause that much damage, but that's going to be treated, or the trunk is going to be treated. This is going to be tossed. So far what I've gotten done is I was able to pull this threaded stud in. It was stuck behind the panel here. And then I also stuck 2 bolts with nuts and washers down there, and bolts, nuts, and washers here. So those are in place. Now I'm going to clean those out, get all the water out. Get all the water out over here. And then I'm going to use some wire brushes right there. Clean it up some, or try to remove as much of the rust as possible. Then I'm going to spray this rust dissolver on there. Normally takes about a half hour. You don't really want to get it on anything else. Put that on there, then I'll have to clean that out, and then I'm going to paint it and hopefully prevent it from causing any more damage. This is the piece that is inside behind the fuel door. And there are 4 Phillips or cross tip screws in it. There's no washers or nuts behind them. They go directly into a threaded plastic plug that locks it in place. Also on this side is where the gas door release button is. So you'll have to take this off. Pretty easy to take off. You can just use a pair of pliers or Leatherman or Gerber. You get that off. I mean, if it falls inside, it's okay, especially if you get the liner off on the inside. There is a spring ring here, or spring clamp, whichever you want to call it. And that will go around this part right here that locks around the fuel inlet. This hose right here, which has this I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's like a nipple that goes in here, and then there is a clip right here. So this would go in, and then this clip would hold it in place. And that is where the fuel, and in this case fuel and rain, is running down in there. This hose ran into the trunk but stopped short of where it's supposed to go. The end of that hose is supposed to go right there where that grommet is. So now I've got to replace that hose, and I'm going to replace the hose. After I take that piece off, I'm going to put it in the new hose and then put it back on here. So I may have to just cut it right here to get it off and then put it in the new hose. Okay, there you go. Finally came off. Now, looks like it was glued in there. That's why it didn't want to cooperate. This is a clear hose, but it is safe for fuel. Got this on the new hose. To be on the safe side, I'm going to cut this hose extra long and run it out the bottom, and then cut it once it's out the bottom, and leave a little excess on the bottom. The hose does need to come straight down, so you gotta kind of fish it through. Going through the grommet. Got the hose in where it needs to be, and you can see it's coming out down there. And now what I'm going to do is put this piece back on, but I'm going to have to put some sealant on the back side here, because it looks like at one time it was some foam, but it's completely broken down. So put some sealant on there and then put it on, but of course attach the hose first. Well, attach the hose before I put it in. All right, got the rust dissolver in there. Just waiting for it to do its magic on that side and this side as well. Now I'm just waiting for 30 minutes. I also put some along here and there because there was some rust there, so I'll clean that off, and then I'll put some flat black paint on there and then be done with it. As far as the gas tank, all 4 Phillips or cross tip screws back in place. Got the locking nut on the door release here. The only issue still remaining is, well, the hose is on there as well, and the hose goes out the bottom of the trunk. The only issue that remains is this part right here stays slightly open. It's like maybe 1/8 or just a little bit more, and so when it rains, water constantly gets in here, and then when it gets in here, it goes into here. Shouldn't really be an issue anymore, but the door does need to be fixed. But the actual electronic plunger right here, that piece is, for a new piece, is $300. You get it used for a lot less, but for some reason this pin and this part right here, this square part, don't quite work the way they're supposed to, because as that pin, this pin right here hits this, it slides until it goes in here and locks in. But this is so big that when you close the door, it pops back up. The reason why it's popping back up is because there is a metal spring right here, and the metal spring does need to be there so that the door pops open when it's needed to be open. But as far as this goes, it's not working so great. I've done about as much as I can do for that rust down there. I actually cleaned this out, flushed it out, and then I used a wire brush on it, and then I put the rust dissolver on it for a half hour. Then I had to remove that, and then after I removed that, I dried it out completely, and then I took the wire brush back to it again, and this is what I got. And in the process also discovered that there's now a hole next to the grommet for the fuel tank spillage drain tube, and there was already a small hole right there at the bottom already that I knew about, but that one's not necessarily right in the middle of all the rust. That one is, so that one will probably build. Now what I'm going to do is patch those holes up, and then I'm going to primer it and flat black paint it to hopefully preserve as much of it as possible, because this isn't going to be a major repair anytime soon, because there's a lot of other things that need to be done on the car.